Welcome back to the Hoops Boys pod. It's your host with the most, Jet. Got CProc with me, and our two guest experts, Greg and Shad. We're in the semifinals of the playoffs. It's action-packed. I think, to me personally, I think all the series are pretty good. But firstly, want to touch on this the Suns and Mavs. To me, I think Luka's been the best player in the entire playoffs so far. He's going against a formidable team in the Suns. Greg, let's start with you. How do we feel about this series and how each team is performing?
I think for me, and I agree, obviously Luka's been awesome, and he's the reason too. But for me, it's more disappointing in Phoenix's effort. I didn't expect them to drop 2 games in a row. I figured at this point in the series it'd be 3-1. I think for my take, it's concerning for them. Like I still don't think Dallas is a great team. It's Luka and the cast. So I think it's from, even if they get beyond these series, like I think Phoenix will probably hold serve and win their home games, probably win this series. But I definitely, as far as their title chances at this point, you have to be somewhat concerned. I don't feel like they've looked very good at all these last 2 games in Dallas.
I agree. Shad, how do you feel about this series?
I think the series is going to go 7. I think Dallas is playing much better than what I initially thought. I think what most people initially thought. When they play at home, they're a completely different team. Seems like their role players step up, which is everybody besides Luka. Brunson, Dinwiddie, Claver, Finney Smith. It just seems like when they're at home, they, it's like they're not afraid of the moment. They step up, they hit the shots that they don't hit on the road. And then Luka, I think he's the second best player in the entire NBA. He does pretty much everything. With him, I think you got a fighting chance, when you have the best player in the series. So I think, each team in the series is going to win their home game, and I think it's going to go 7, but I think Phoenix wins it at home in game 7.
Yeah. One thing too that he brought up, just have to give credit. Like a lot of their Dallas's role players have played well. Like Davis Bertans actually had a pretty decent game. Kleber's had a bit. So I got to give credit to them as well. Like as much as I'm more bashing the Suns a bit, some of their role players they've been effective. They've been a difference.
How about that Finney Smith? He went crazy today. 8 for 12 from 3. Sheesh.
Sharp shooter. And to Shad's point, I'm kind of almost, I don't want to necessarily say amazed, but like more than impressed in a kind of bewildered way that the home cooking's been so prevalent in this series. Like you have Dallas who, despite the fact that it's Luka and everybody else, this ramshamble type of roster they've put together, they still wind up finding ways to win and getting past a lot of opponents in the semifinals. And Phoenix, of course, was the best team in the league this year. And it's just kind of amazing that these 2 teams, one that's so far and above everyone else, and the other one that just happens to find ways to win, they can't figure out how to win on the road. And it's been a home court type of series.
One other thing too, if you guys caught game 2, Chris Paul was incredible game 2.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that literally, I feel like, and I'm not exaggerating to say this, I feel like that's one of the best games I've ever seen someone have, like, period. Like he completely dominated that fourth quarter. I mean, it was a close game, and all of a sudden you turned around and Phoenix is up 30 and it's blowout city. He was incredible that game.
So to that point, do you think maybe he hits E on the gas tank a little too quickly in these elder years of his career?
Well,
being that today was a little bit more of a rougher stretch and he wound up fouling out.
Well, that's kind of the concern, and we'll go back to the New Orleans series. The more games they play, it's not good for him. He's gotten hurt in the playoffs a number of times. So I think you're playing with gas right now. If you're them, they don't want these series going longer. They are not winning without him. So if the more he plays, the more miles he logs. That's not a good thing as far as I'm concerned.
And he was pretty bad game 3 as well, right?
No.
On his birthday, he was terrible. He had like 5 turnovers in the first half.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Shad, what are your thoughts on CP3 being a resident Clippers fan and having rooted for him for most of his prime years?
Yeah, I think he's the best leader in the NBA, maybe besides LeBron James. Just the intangibles that he gives to his team. I think he doesn't have the athletic ability or anything like that of a top player, but just his leadership and everything else that he does. The key moments he might be the best player on the floor. I think the age thing just worries me because as you see, it's kind of like he plays great one day, the next day he's average. So it's going to come down to attrition with him. Hopefully he doesn't get injured. Hopefully he doesn't run out of gas. But I think the Suns are going to pull it out. I just maybe get worried, as we get down the line to conference finals or NBA finals, whether he could, stay healthy and still has energy.
Are we in agreement that home court is going to serve for the remainder of the series?
Yes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, just me personally, I think Phoenix is definitely winning theirs. I wouldn't be shocked if Phoenix won Game 6 in Dallas, but to your point, I that wouldn't surprise me at all. But I don't think, even with Dallas these 2 games, I don't see Dallas winning in Phoenix. I don't.
Switching gears to our next series, Shad, you can lead this one off. The Celtics Bucks series, I think we touched on a little bit off air. We're in pretty much agreement that this could go the distance, but through the first 2 games, we had game 1 where Milwaukee came out and punched Boston in the teeth. And then game 2, Boston clapped back and dragged Milwaukee out to the woodshed. And game 3 was down to the wire. Of course, Milwaukee pulled it out. What's the real vibe of this series? Is it going to be one team's going to give it their best and the other team's going to be caught off guard, or are we going to get more of game 3 as the series progresses?
I think you're going to get more of a game 3. It's going to be a back and forth series. I just think, Giannis, he can't do it all. I think Boston just has, a better roster, 1 through 12. And especially with Middleton, not being there, it's going to hurt them down the line when it comes to, games, 5, 6, 7. I think Boston's defense is going to finally catch up to Giannis. He's not the greatest, offensive player, but his effort is what, kind of leads his team and his skill set. I just think he's going to get tired, or it's going to be like games where he just gets in foul trouble, and the Bucks are just, not going to really have any other kind of options. I know Drew Holiday is doing, he's okay, Portis, Lopez, but it seems like, everybody else is just kind of role players. They don't have like a real star, and that team is kind of like, the Dallas Mavericks of the East. They have one player that, is the star of the show, and everybody else kind of just falls in line, and hopefully he's not having a terrible game, and hopefully they're at home because it seems like they played much better. I still see Boston winning this series. I think it's going to go 7, and I think Boston pulls it out just because they have a deeper roster.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It's the series of our 2 champs, I think. I mean, we all picked Phoenix to come out of the West. But I think Shad, both you and I picked our Eastern Conference champ to raise the trophy, if I'm not mistaken. So it's really one of us is going to look wrong at the end of this series. But Greg, does the Middleton thing make a difference here?
100% it does. I actually still, I'm with Chad on this. I think the series is going to be more of game 3. I think it's going to be a long series. And I still think Boston is going to win this series as well. The depth is a factor. It will become more of a factor the longer the series goes on. In a quick glance yesterday, if you would have told me on the road, Jason Tatum shoots 4 for 19, 0 for 6 from 3, one of his worst games all year, and they still almost won in Milwaukee. Like, that to me tells me, hey, they almost won there with a terrible performance out of Tatum. I wouldn't count on him shooting that poorly again. So for my money's worth, it was a tough loss, but I still think Boston over the course of this series will prevail. I think the depth is a big, huge issue. And of course, the Middleton injury. Yes. So I think I think they're going to grind this one out.
And also, Giannis had to score like 42 as well for them to win by 1. On top of that, and I don't think he's not doing that every game.
Yeah, I saw even Drew Holiday, jacking up 30 shots. He was 11 for 30 yesterday.
Right.
I mean, I understand they have one less weapon. Obviously he needs to score more than he would have if Middleton was around. But yeah, I'd feel good even down 2-1. I'd feel good as a Celtics backer here. Like I said, they almost won that game with Tatum playing that poorly. I wouldn't count on that again.
Yeah.
Very much playing still out in their out of body experience from the last few months, then almost overcoming such a horrible performance.
They were due.
Yeah. I think just because we've talked on Chris Paul, his age, and then of course the Middleton injury. How have injuries really played a factor in the playoffs so far? Not to go off script too much, but
it's been in some ways the story. And if you look at the whole series, Embiid misses the first 2 games. Miami, they've lost people a number of times already during the series. John Morant now is probably out game 4. It's a huge factor. There's no doubt about it. And you're probably going to have more as the playoffs progress as well. So health is the utmost concern for, I think, pretty much all of these contenders at this point. So it has been the story in my mind.
yeah, I'm trying to pick out a team that hasn't gone through. And I think the closest one of late is probably the Warriors, but they came out of the box with everybody hurt.
Right.
And they got it out of the way, hopefully, for them. No, but Gary Payton, listen, that's a factor too. Gary Payton going out. Gary Payton had one of the more underrated seasons. He was a factor for the Warriors, even in the playoffs early he was. So even that hurts them. That's a depth piece, an important one.
I agree.
Chad, what do you think is the most impactful injury so far?
I think the most impactful injury so far is definitely Embiid. As you saw, like the first few games of that Miami-Philly series, Philly just looked completely overmatched, like a team who would get swept if Embiid didn't come back and lose pretty much every game by, at least double digits plus. Embiid, he came back last game. He wasn't himself, but he just kind of felt like that Willis Reed factor for the team. They believed that, it's because he was on the court, they had a fighting chance and just brought the crowd into it. As you can see, like James Harden, who's kind of almost fell off a cliff. Tyrese Maxey, he's a great young player, but I think he's probably a year away from really kind of being a star and like the second option of that team and potentially an all-star. And Embiid, might win MVP, and it pretty much shows, in the series. When they're out, they look terrible, getting pretty much blown out, and when he's there and really it's not even 100%, probably 50%, 60, 70 maybe, and he just inspired everybody, and they won. And he took pretty much Bam Adebayo out the game. I don't know if it was all mentally, but Bam Adebayo, if you look at the box score, it's almost like he didn't even play. So I think the Embiid factor is, the greatest kind of injury and non-injury, factor of the playoffs.
Just a quick note about him too. I'm looking at the first quarter. He has 11 in the first quarter right now. Still going. So
Chad digs the knife in a little deep on us poor old Knicks fans, bringing back a memory that we never got to experience.
What are you talking about? What I do? I even try to
do you with your Willis Reed comparison, my friend.
Come on.
I get it. I gotta bring it up.
The other thing too, when you guys brought up Harden, is it me or like I really think like when I'm watching Harden, I'm wondering like he may be quickly on the downside here. Like he does not look like the same player. He just does not. So Philly. I mean, you have to be concerned if you're Philly. I guess Maxey's Maxey's turning into a hell of a player, but they pretty much put all their eggs in that basket, and yeah, I don't know, unless Harden goes back to drawing board and loses a lot of weight, or he doesn't look like the same player, no doubt about it.
Do you think it's sorry?
I was gonna say,
Do you
don't
think it's-
spill all the Philly knowledge too quick. We got to get to that in a little bit.
That's true.
Uh,
All right, we're gonna take a quick break, but when we come back, we will be talking about the Sixers series, and also the Warriors series. If you want to kick it with us, in the meantime, hit us up on our socials at Hoops Boys Pod at both Insta and Twitter, and we'll get back to you. But until then, Hoops Boys Pod.
Well, boys, girls, and everyone in between, welcome back in to the Hoops Void podcast. We have a couple more series to talk about before we bid you adieu for another week's time. And the first one we want to talk about is some West Coast flavor. The up-and-coming team versus the team of establishment for the last several years. Grizzlies and Warriors both seeded highly 2 and 3 going into the playoffs. They meet in the semifinals. And this one has been a little competitive in the early goings. Game 3 was not so much, but game 1 started off extremely close. Golden State pulled it out at the end. Memphis came back, took game 2. And then the Warriors really came out, punched the Grizzlies in the teeth right away, held on throughout and wound up winning by 30. So Memphis was without Dylan Brooks, of course, in game 3 based on his suspension. And now it looks like Ja Morant is not likely to play in game 4. So we'll start off with Shad. Does Memphis have any hope, considering the fact that they did actually play fairly decently in the season when John missed games? Do they have any chance in sticking this out against the Warriors, or is this just the fork in the steak and they're done? Bye-bye, Warriors going to Western Conference Final.
I think the Warriors go on to win, but I don't think it's as easy as everybody thinks it is. I think it goes at least 6. Just because, as we saw throughout, kind of this second round, home court, that's a great advantage for these teams that you think are underdogs. I think only reason, I think the Warriors definitely win is because the Warriors won one of the home games at Memphis. But I think Memphis goes back home and they at least win one of the games, game 5. I think the Warriors probably end up winning in 6, but I don't think it's, everybody thinks, Warriors pretty much, do a gentleman's sweep from here on out. I think the Ja Morant factor would be huge, but I think, Ja being young, he's gonna come and play in this game, especially since people try to say that the Grizzlies are better without him, based on, his long stint being injured this regular season. So although I think, the Warriors win, I don't think it's going to be a, pretty much a gentleman's sweep for the Warriors win in 5. I think they probably go 6 and maybe even 7.
So you think they will stave off elimination Monday night?
Yes, I do.
Greg, what you got? Cooked or going on a little bit longer than we might think?
In the words of the immortal Michael Ray Richardson, the ship be sinking. That's what I think's happened in Memphis. I mean, the Morant factor is huge, and on top of that, Golden State's playing a really high level. Even yesterday, Kuminga plays 18 points in 18 minutes. If he's a factor now as well, I just think Jordan Poole has turned his game up a level. I just think Memphis they're up against it. I think Golden State right now is the better team, and ironically enough, the Memphis record without Ja Morant they played surprisingly well without him this year. But I just think even with him, I think, Golden State taking game 3, I think they have a stranglehold on this series. And Memphis may take one more game, but I'd be shocked if Golden State did not win this series at this point.
And they get Dylan Brooks back next game. And Desmond Bane, the first couple of games of the series, you can still see he was a little banged up.
Yeah, he's banged up too. Yep.
But I think last game he played better than he has in the previous couple. And I think that back, it's a back injury. I think over time it's going to get better. I think the travel helped him too because he had a couple days of rest. It's going to have to be on those two guys to try to win this next game for them.
Partner, one real quick. Ja's been your guy all season. You were big on him all season. You were holding tight to his MVP chances all the way up until the end. How have you been impressed by him in this first really elongated playoff run of his young career?
I think he's as advertised. Everything they say about him is true, and he's showing it. They're daring him to shoot. He's shooting it. He's making it. He's attacking everybody on the court. Not scared. He's not scared of Draymond, Steph, anybody. And you gotta love that attitude, that mentality. And he's out there and he's showing and proving. He's a factor. You got to stop me before you can stop this team. And so far, the Warriors haven't shown that they could stop him. Unfortunately, he got a little banged up towards the end of the game, but like Shad said, he's young. Hopefully he'll just bounce back and play, but hopefully it's nothing too serious.
Greg and Shad, what do you guys think of this first long exposure we've seen from Ja Morant?
I think Ja's definitely turned into a superstar. Just his tenacity, his athleticism, him dunking on people. Just the way I didn't think he was a great shooter, but he's proved to definitely be a pretty good shooter in these playoffs. I just thought he was kind of maybe like a Derrick Rose, pretty much all athleticism into the basket. But no, he showed a different dimension to his game. He shows that he can lead a team of what most people think is kind of nobodies and bringing them to the second round and going against the perennial championship contenders in the Golden State Warriors up until this injury. So I think Ja's going to bounce back and he's going to have a couple good games to keep Memphis in.
As far as Ja for me, I think he's a legit top 5 superstar right this second already. I mean, if you saw game 2, he did it every which way. Like Shad said, he's dunking on people. He's breaking ankles. He had a step back jumper. I forgot who was guarding him in the lane, where basically was lucky not to fall down. He just totally had his way in the fourth quarter. So he really he reminds me. I was talking recently in a just to make us another sport analogy. He reminds me a little like Barry Sanders. Like every so often, there's one play he does that you have to shake your head. Did I just really see that? Just that athleticism. It's sick, to be honest. Yeah. So he's definitely in my mind, he's a top 5 player right now. But I just the injury, and I think Golden State's the better team for right now. But they are in great hands. There's no doubt about it. Ja is a legit stud.
And the person that he did that to, that was Jordan Poole.
It was Poole, wasn't it? I thought it was Poole.
Yeah.
Yeah. But but that's also that was a clutch basket as well. It wasn't just
it was a big bucket.
Yeah, it wasn't the drama behind it. It was a one or two possession game at the time, and yeah, he was incredible. Totally took the game over.
Speaking of Poole, Shad, of course, was very big on him coming into the playoffs as the next big thing for Warriors. And he was, aside from that particular moment, he has kind of showed up a little bit. But Shad was also down on someone else on the Warriors called Klay Thompson. And where you were not able to join us on our last episode, Greg wanted to call you out a little bit on your departing faith of Klay Thompson. So would you like to answer that as far as Klay's production in the playoffs?
I think the numbers are saying he's doing better than he really is. I don't know. I think they played better with Curry and Poole on the floor versus with him being on the floor. I still think that they'd be better off trading him, but hey, I mean, he's one of the heart and soul players of the team, so I can see why they want to keep him and they'll try to integrate him into what they've been doing this year. He's not for dead, but I certainly don't think he's the Klay Thompson of old.
Yeah. Well, here's my take, Klay, and this is where the Poole factor is huge. Now they just have more guys than Klay and Steph.
Yeah.
One of the Denver games, Denver, was basically clawing and battling to stay in the game. They had a lead. And it reminded me of the old school Warriors. You looked up and in 10 seconds, they just put 4 threes on the board. All 3 of them, Poole, Curry, Clay, and all of a sudden Golden State's up 10. So I think, you're adding with Clay back and Poole as these third dynamic scoring options now. Like they said, they have to me that look of the old school Warriors because of that. Like pick your poison. You can't double. What are you going to do defensively other than hope they don't shoot well? That's really the only. I mean, really, they have 3 phenomenal 3-point shooters. So I think that has definitely helped Clay as well. Is that Poole is a factor. They're loaded, but Clay, he doesn't. For me, he doesn't need to be the Clay of old. He needs to be close. And for me, I think he is getting into form.
That sounds like the either the Sacramento Kings of a little ways ago or the Phoenix Suns of the mid 2000s. Just hope they don't shoot well, and that's the only way you could defend them.
Really though, now that when I brought up Kuminga earlier, if Kuminga is a factor now as well, I mean, I know it's one game, but everyone knows he's talented as all world talent.
Yeah.
If he puts it together and he scored 18 in 18 minutes. Where do you guard them is my question. Good luck.
It's a lot going on over there.
It is.
I don't know. I think the Warriors pretty much get swept next round. So
Whoa.
So wait, Luka's going to the finals?
No, I think Phoenix is going to. I think Phoenix probably sweeps them.
Oh.
But what if Luka does get by the Suns? Will Dallas sweep the Warriors?
No, I don't think Luka has enough talent around him. But I think the Phoenix Suns will sweep them. Maybe the Warriors win one. I just think the Phoenix Suns are much better than the Warriors. Warriors have the shooting, but other than that, Suns could punish them inside. They could D up with them. They got scorers. I think the Suns will sweep them.
I can see that.
Shad's always good for a hot take per episode.
I can see that though.
I think Shad invested in a broom company or something because that is sweeping them. Whoa.
I'll give them. I'll say the
Man.
Suns in 5.
Suns in 5. that famous meme. With Suns in 4, right?
4.
All right, yeah. Let's. That's an awesome series, but let's talk about another series. The Sixers and Heat. Joel Embiid was a little banged up in the beginning of the series, missing the first 2 games, but third game with the theatrics came back and helped lead his team to a victory. Sixers look renewed. Shad, how do we feel about this series?
I think the Sixers come back and win. I think it's going 7 though, but I think the Sixers come back and win. The Embiid factor is the X factor. He just, like I said, I haven't watched this game 4 at all, but for game 3, he just inspires that team. Because Harden isn't the same player. Maxey, he's good, but he's young. Tobias Harris, he's up and down. But Embiid, he just controls, kind of the game, controls the paint. Even if it's a decoy, he just brings all the attention from Miami onto himself. So I think they come back. Embiid, he gets himself back into shape, these next couple games, and then later in the series, he just kind of, becomes like the MVP caliber player when he's putting up, damn near 40 points a game, 15 rebounds, and kind of making Bam Adebayo looking, average. And I don't think Miami has great offense anyway. So I think,
right.
With Embiid, him putting up, 35, 40 points a game and the rest of the guys kind of falling in line without him, I don't think Miami gets scored if, Embiid is there and healthy. So I think the Sixers win 7.
Even getting smacked around the first 2 games, you think that could just be chalked up to nothing more than Embiid's injuries problems?
I think so. I think Embiid, he's definitely a top 3 player in the league. So that presence alone is an important factor. That's like, like if Luka was gone or Giannis is gone, it's that type of a bigger factor for that team. They're a completely different team. So him being there, luckily it's not like a major injury like a knee or anything like that where, it might not even look like the same player. I think it's just mostly his conditioning. So him getting back to in shape, he's going to, dominate the series. And if there was like a series MVP, he's going to win. He's going to inspire his team to win 6 or 7. Sorry, 7.
He
I won't
was
say
Greg.
6.
He was Greg's MVP.
Well, listen, I'm totally going to differ with Chad on this one. Embiid is no doubt an amazing year, competitor. I mean, I love watching Embiid play as much as I'm not a Sixers fan, but I don't think there's much else with him. I think Miami has been better all year than all of us have paid attention to, or they're deeper. Even Oladipo coming back is a factor now. I think Embiid can only carry them as so much. So even with a big game, like I would pick Miami to close the series out from here 4-1. We talked about Harden earlier. I'm looking quickly. We're about halfway through the second quarter. Harden just hit his first free field goal of the game. This is not a blip or an anomaly anymore. Like, it happens for a week. You have a bad month. He's struggling. It just flat out struggling. He does not look any semblance of the James Harden we knew from past years. For me, that is the overlying factor. As much as Maxi's been excellent and he looks like he's turning into a really nice ball player, I think the Harden thing, they're going to need him to deliver, and I don't think it's going to happen. I think Miami wins tonight and closes the series out 5.
Is he taking up too much oxygen from Maxi? Because Maxi was outstanding in the previous series against Toronto. Should Harden do what he did in Brooklyn and take a step back and let Maxi be more of a front row player?
I think it's a catch-22 here because they need the old James Harden to be that if they're going to win in advance. The problem is he's not. So, yeah, is it the chicken or the egg here? Yes, Maxi's definitely, been the better player by far out of the two of them, in the playoffs so far, but Maxi and Embiid alone are not going to win a title. They're going to need Harden to be what he was, and I don't think it's going to happen. And that's, you have to – the conditioning thing, we all wonder. He doesn't appear to be in the best shape and all that, but there are serious questions in my mind if you're a Philly loyalist here going forward. Because if he's going downhill, and again, he's not 20 anymore either. Guys, he's logged a lot of minutes. I think that's a concern. I would not feel pretty in the city of brotherly love right now. No bueno.
So do you think it's more of him like getting old, or do you think the rule changes have also like dampened his ability to score as often as he did?
Just called for me the eyeball test. That explosive first step he had. He looks slow to me. He just looks slow, heavy legs. So for me, I mean, again, I can't say is he not in the best condition? He doesn't look to be, but I can't really say that. You almost hope that is the case, because if not, he's slowing down. Like that burst he once had, I just don't see it. There's so many times going to the hole where the guy used to be at the free throw line more than anybody ever. He's not beating people to spots. He can't do it right now. So that for me is it's age, conditioning, maybe all the above. That for me is the concern. If you're a Philly fan, he looks slow.
I think it's father time. I think he's probably injured. They're not reporting it because mid-season, just after the trade, he looked phenomenal. He looked like James Harden has always looked. And I think maybe there was something, hamstring, thigh, back, something. I think there's some type of injury where he's not 100%. So I don't think he's gonna fall off the cliff where he's just like a nobody from now on, not an all-star. But I also think he's getting a little older, so I don't think he's gonna be like 100% James Harden of old, but I think he, in the future going, he could probably be like 85 or 90%. Right now,
I just feel like when I watch this playoffs, and I get it, they're forcing it because they need him to be it. But I just don't see it right now for him. That may change, like you said. Could there be an injury? Could there be? Sure. But right now, he does not look good to anyone watching them right now. He does not.
I know Tobias is normally an up and down player, but he's been playing phenomenal this series. His numbers are up. He's like pulling the slack for James Harden, I feel.
From an old Clippers fan, I don't trust Tobias.
I knew he was going to say it.
But you definitely trust Doc Rivers. We know that.
Right.
Doc, you trust.
Yeah.
They're reunited and it feels so good.
Doc actually, that actually came up in the last series. Doc was taking some heat about all the, the bad playoff losses and this and that. And he kind of snapped. He basically said, why don't we go and take a closer look at that? Basically trying to say, I've also won a lot of games, but it definitely got to him. He had a little temperamental moment when he was asked about that.
Yeah, he was definitely hot about it. He was like, look at my roster.
I tell you what, I just hope he doesn't watch this podcast, because if he got hot at that, imagine him listening to Shad. Oh boy.
Well, that's what
They're gonna win. I said they're gonna win.
That's what I used to always say about Jason Tatum. Like, he must have been listening to the podcast and hearing me bash him all the time, and that's a little fire under his ass.
I feel like we could be talking about European soccer and somehow Shad would get in about Doc Rivers somehow.
He's like, if Doc Rivers was a soccer coach, he would be the worst soccer coach.
Yeah, he would have lost that game too.
He'd be taking this squad to relegation every year. Not to keep harping on Father Time, but what's a worst Father Time scenario right now? Is it Chris Paul or is it James Harden? As far as that impact on their team, on their respective teams.
Chris Paul.
Really?
Yeah. Because Chris Paul, I think, is the best player on the Suns, regardless if you say Devin Booker because of his scoring.
Hot take 3.
The Suns never really did
agree.
anything without Chris Paul. They were like a fringe playoff team, or a team that always had great players but never did anything. Chris Paul is the glue, the leadership of that team, regardless of his stats, his scoring, his old man age. He's the driver of the bus, as they would say. While James Harden, he's the second option. It's more Embiid of being the star of that team. Team that's been great the past couple of years. They just haven't get over the hump. The Suns were nowhere near the hump without Chris Paul. So I think it's Chris Paul.
I'd agree with that with Paul. I think Paul's that odd example of a player who obviously with age, he still is in excellent shape, but he obviously has lost the steps to some degree, but his knowledge and IQ of the game is second to none. So for me, I could even make an argument, I feel to some degree, watching tonight, he had 2 games in the last month. The guy didn't miss a shot. He just didn't miss from anywhere. You can make an argument he's better now than he's ever been to some degree. Yes, I know he's lost a step, but as far as a basketball player, he's at such a high IQ and level of play right now. They cannot win without him. There's no way. Absolutely no chance. So I'm in Chad. He's the bigger concern. If he's down, they're not winning.
I agree.
I was hoping you were going to take it the opposite direction.
There's a on the Suns. There's only one other player that could go get their own shot. Everybody else needs to be set up. Jay Crowder's not going to isolate.
Players.
Not going to isolate Jay Crowder. What is he going to do?
Jay Crowder, what are you going to do? Put Jay Crowder back in someone's crosshairs from was it last year's playoffs or the year before?
Oh, he's been shooting lights out though. No disrespect to him, but
yeah, Paul's Paul. They have to have Paul. And if you saw that, I was talking about earlier in game 2, I mean it was Paul versus everyone else, and they couldn't stop him. They didn't have an answer.
Before we wrap for this episode, Greg's favorite whipping boy in the league hired a new coach today. So is Mike Brown finally the man to turn the Sacramento Kings around?
Well, I'd like to extend my deepest condolences to Mike Brown because you're walking into a train wreck. And honestly, I've stated this earlier. For me, the problem is the front office. They have not had a clear direction in, it feels like, decades at this point. So Brown, sure, capable of doing a good job until that front office gets their what together and has a formal plan and actually devises a strategy other than haphazardly bringing in guys. Even this year, they trade for Sabonis, thinking that they stated they want to make a playoffs. Even if they made it, they weren't lasting. There's just no direction there. So that's why I say my condolences for Mike Brown, because there's some talent, no doubt. There is some talent there. Getting when you have Sabonis there, you have building blocks. But Davion Mitchell I love, but I think there's nowhere to go but up. That's a good thing for him. But I just think that franchise in general is just, they don't have their stuff together. So it could be tough sledding for them.
Chad, are they still a dumpster fire?
Yes, but I think they can improve a little bit. I think they can make a playing game next year. I guess that's kind of their ceiling in my book.
Well, to that franchise,
right.
It actually is a decent.
Wait, who are we talking about? The Lakers?
Yeah, the Lakers.
Oh.
Ooh, dig that knife in.
Yeah, but yeah, I think the Kings can make the playing game. Next year. I don't think Mike Brown is the right coach for them. I think they kind of need a up-tempo, like a kind of coach like a Mike D'Antoni. Mike Brown, from my experience, kind of always been like the old school kind of grinded kind of coach, defense first. And he's never really done anything in his career outside of having LeBron James. So I think they got some pieces with Fox, with Sabonis, with Mitchell. And it's just a matter of, who they get in the draft, I guess, this past year. Maybe they can make a trade, a team like Utah or somebody like who's underachieved over the past few years and is selling. Maybe we'll get some kind of star for, pennies on the dollar in a trade. But yeah, I don't see them being a complete turnaround, but I do see them taking little steps, kind of maybe being like the Charlotte Hornets of the West, where they kind of make the playing game the next year or two, and just depends how they draft. They can maybe move them up, or somehow they get like somebody good in the trade that's selling.
Partner, any thoughts?
I don't know. Like Greg said, I don't know what they're doing over there.
They don't either.
I think Halliburton was a hell of a player. They just gave up on him like that. I mean, prayers to him because he got out of hell. But but yeah, I don't know what they're doing.
Got out of there and could maybe still maintain a bird rights contract. After his rookie move up.
But I will cut on our own Knicks. But honestly, they remind me of like what the Knicks had been for a couple decades. No clear direction. Moves that are laughable to everyone else. And they make this public statement again with Halliburton. Okay, Sabonis is a nice player, no doubt about it. But Halliburton's younger. I don't think they have a clue what they're doing. They really don't. They've gone through coaches, GMs. It's everything's a mess with them.
Yeah.
Who is the GM? Is it still Divac?
No, I don't.
No,
Vladdy's been gone for a bit.
Yeah,
I believe. I don't think Vladdy is although I got to check on that.
was Luke Wallen the type of coach that should have that could have worked out if it was going to work out, but it just obviously didn't. As far as Shad, your point to they
Monty McNair is the GM, by the way.
I have no idea who that is.
He's Monty Python's cousin.
No, but I don't think Luke Walton has ever proved that he was a good coach. He kind of had, a kind of similar team like the Sacramento Kings are right now with the Lakers before they got LeBron. They had kind of young talent that just kind of need to gel together, but it seemed like they never did. He did good with the Warriors during that stint, but that's when the Warriors at their apex, and me and you could have did that. So I don't think you put this on, kind of Luke Walton. I don't think he's a great coach, but I also don't think he was in a great situation. So it was just bad chemistry from the start.
Yeah, I did. I mean, you can definitely no, he did not do a great job, but on the flip side, who was going to go in there and actually they've been a mess defensively. I mean, it's like watching grade school basketball sometimes. It's like the bullfighting Olay right to the paint every time. They give up way too many points, so uncontested. Yeah, they're a mess. But again, like I said, like the Knicks, it was like reinventing a new strategy, then deciding, oh, we're going to go for the 8th seed. You get stuck in that cycle of trying to make the 8th seed. You'll be in that for 20 years, as they've been. So organizational philosophy needs to obviously improve because what they've done has not been working, obviously.
Well, with that, viewers and listeners combined, we bid you adieu. My co-host with the most, James the Jet, and myself, America's favorite bitch ass white boy, CProc. We give our undying thanks as always to the greatest guest experts on the planet, Greg and Shad. And
We're not worthy.
we're not worthy. I know I'm not, that's for sure. So thank you again, as always, for helping us keep the ship afloat, so to speak. And as always, keep in touch with us. Tell us why we're right or wrong on our social channels, Twitter and Instagram at HoopsBoysPod. And until next week, just like the Mamba himself,